Watermark's Church Leadership Podcast, a conversation with church leaders for church leaders. I'm your host, Pam McGee. Thanks so much for joining us today. Hey friends, I've got a really fun episode for you today. I want to play for you a talk that my wife Pam and I gave at a church leaders conference this year. And so we talked about the qualifications of leadership and really the blessing that marriage should be in the context of ministry. And we shared some of the things that we've done, some of our learnings, some of our mistakes, and I hope that will be an encouragement to you. So I think at the very end of the talk, we kind of gave everybody in the audience a little wooden block. And if you can imagine maybe a 1x3 little wooden block that probably is 1 inch high, little slit in there for a picture. And on the front, it says, how is your ministry? And it was just a gift we gave to those in the audience to say, hey, just remember that your marriage is your primary ministry. Your family is your primary ministry, or those that are closest to you, if you're not married, are your primary ministry, and really the qualifications for leadership. So that's what that is. You don't have a picture of that. We might put that in the show notes there for you. But without further ado, please enjoy this talk that my wife and I gave at CLC this year. So friends, I want to start with a question today. How is your ministry? How's your ministry? Like honestly, truly. Not what you post on Instagram, not what you tell friends at your pastor's conferences, but how is your ministry? It's a question we ask a lot around here of each other. It's an ongoing dialogue that keeps resurfacing. And I want to ask you today, how is your ministry? And the place I want us to look when we think about our ministry is 1 Timothy chapter 3. 1 Timothy chapter 3, Paul's giving some instructions to Timothy. He said there's going to be some guys that you're going to want to put in a pastoral or eldership role. This is what you're looking for. 1 Timothy chapter 3, he says, here's a trustworthy saying. Whoever aspires to be an elder, overseer, desires a noble task. It's a good thing. Now, here's what to look for. Now, an overseer is to be above reproach, faithful to his wife, temperate, self-controlled, respectable, hospitable, able to teach. Not given to drunkenness, not violent, but gentle, not quarrelsome, not a lover of money. He must manage his own family well and see that his children obey him. And he must do so in a manner worthy of full respect. And if anyone doesn't know how to manage his own family, how can he take care of God's church? He must not be a recent convert, and or he will be conceited and fall under the same judgment as the devil. He must also have a good reputation with outsiders so that he will not fall into disgrace and into the devil's trap. And so for many of us, that's a passage we've heard, and it might bear looking at in a new way. And here's how I'd ask you to look at it. Imagine Paul's talking to Timothy, and he said, hey, you're going to get a lot of applications for these people that want to lead in the church. Let me tell you how to read an application for pastor or elder or church leader. And he said, you want to look for 3 things, Timothy. You want to look for character. And he lists out all these things. Specifically in the role of elder and teacher, there's a competency. They need to be able to teach. They need to be able to teach sound doctrine. They need to guard the church on sound doctrine. And then he says you need to evaluate their ministry. Timothy, you need to evaluate their ministry as you think about bringing them on to any type of leadership in the church. And you see their ministry right there in the text, don't you? It pops. Timothy, evaluate their ministry. Ask how their ministry is before you give them more ministry. It's their family. It's their family. Timothy, you want to know one thing you can look for in their body of work, what kind of leader, what kind of pastor, what kind of shepherd, what kind of elder they're going to be. You look at the way that they've led their family. It's the best tell you have. So friends, I'd ask, how is your ministry? How is your ministry? Specifically, today we're going to talk about marriage. And I will just say, your marriage is the loudest sermon you will ever preach. Friends, this matters because you're going to reproduce yourself in in the congregation and those that you lead, their marriages will be just like yours. And so your ministry has to be your first priority before it is that you go and execute on the other roles that God has given you in this church. This is your primary ministry. And this isn't just about pastors or elders. The next passage is about deacons. 1 Timothy 3 says a deacon must be faithful to his wife. He must manage his children and his household well. So any servant in the church, and then always we know as believers, as disciples, it's the one true mark. Jesus said, you know how you're gonna know? Do you know how you're gonna know if someone's a disciple, a follower of me? You guys know this, John 13. Right. A new command I give you, love one another just as I have loved you. So you must love one another. Guys, listen, by this, everyone you will know you are my disciples if you love one another. This is our calling card. This is the way we show that we love God, that we're discipled to Jesus, and we are fit for ministry. So friends, how is your ministry? Your ministry, your family, in essence, your marriage. It's your qualification to get into ministry of any kind, and it is your ongoing recertification. Because you had a good marriage 20 years ago doesn't mean you're good now. It's something you have to pay attention to. So we're gonna talk about marriage for a few minutes today. And I know I've got some single friends in the audience. I know some of you want to be married, and I would say I think this will help you. If anything, I hope it helps you lengthen your patience and not lower your standards as you think about who it is that you wanna be yoked with for the rest of your life, okay? Some of you are single and you feel called to do so. And I want to say I hold you in very high regard. But this will still matter to you because you will find yourself counseling and giving sound advice to those who are married. And so this will be helpful to you. Some of you in this room want to be married I've got 5 names in my head of people I know on our staff that want to be married. And again, I just want to say, I hate the gender imbalance in the church. And if there's 20 godly men out there today, I've got 20 godly women, and we can make some magic happen right now. But I was just gonna buzz by that, but that's, that's hard, man. That's hard. And I've got friends, I don't know why God's not giving them a spouse. I would. I think about some of the people that have spouses, and I'm like, I wouldn't give one to you. I'd give one to these guys. So I don't know. I didn't intend to say anything. I just felt that. So let's talk about marriage. I want to bring up the person that I feel like is most qualified to talk about that, and it's my wife, Pam. If you would, please welcome her to the stage. Thank you.
Hey, I'm really excited to be here with you, and I'm really encouraged and grateful for the opportunity just to let you all know. We've already said it here. I know you said it yesterday. But we are so encouraged by you. Personally, we are so encouraged by the way you love God and you love your churches, the way you've utilized your gifts to build up the body, and then the way we've just seen you year after year be faithful. That inspires us. Like John said, we hold you in such high regard. So I'm really grateful for the chance to say that. Thank you guys for being here. We love you so much.
Yes.
Yep.
So we're going to talk today about how to have a great ministry. Okay, 9 things you can do to have a great ministry. You're going to hate the first one because you're leaders, okay? But here it is. You start with you. You start with you. And as a leader, this is what you do. You listen to someone's problems, you identify the problem, you tell them the solution, you motivate them to change, you pray, and then you follow up with them to make sure that they've changed. I want to ask you to do that for you, man. Not your spouse, whoever it is that you're sitting next to. You think about yourself, okay? And then if you're single, everything we say today, 75% of it, I would say, applies directly to individuals. And you can still you can take all these principles here, but think about yourself and pour your best energies, your thinking into this message and also into your marriage. You're not some big shot that is clept out of all of this stuff. You are still accountable for everything in the scriptures as it relates to God's son or God's daughter.
Yeah, so we've been saying around here at Reengage and in lots of venues, if you want to improve your marriage, draw a circle around yourself and change everybody inside the circle, right? You have maximum control over one person. I have maximum control over one person. That's me. So when John walked in the door, we had 4 kids under 6. John would walk in the door, and before he even put his bag down, I had to hit him with 5 things the kids did, 3 things that messed up, and like a huge list of things to do. And then I wondered why he wasn't all cozy and wanted to, be intimate or whatever. And I just realized, hey, I'm gonna draw the circle around myself. What is it about me, the way I relate to John, the timing when I ask him to do stuff? How can I work on me? And then lots of times when you do that, the other person moves towards you. And so you have a chance just to draw the circle and work on yourself. We're keenly aware that Matthew 7:3-5 comes before Matthew 18. Before you go to your brother and point out his sin, you get the log out of your own eye. And so we have a chance to do that. Somebody has to go first.
Yeah, leaders go first, friends. Leaders go first. I know your spouse, that sometimes drives you crazy. You see the gaps, but I want to encourage you to work on yourself first. Second, this is an interesting point. I don't know if I've ever made it in a marriage talk, but this is what I would say. Be content. Be content, be grateful for the spouse that you have. As a leader, what we do is we identify what is, we think about the gap between what could be, and we just rail against it until we get changed. That doesn't work very well in marriage. You made a vow to the person you made a vow to, and we keep it, and we are content. Years ago, I was sitting in the backyard with some friends, and we weren't complaining. I wasn't complaining, but we were just kind of talking. And I said, I was just kind of musing. I said, I wish sometimes Pam could generate ideas like I could, or had like vision the way that I did. And one of my friends looked at me as like bewilderment, disgust, or something. And he looked at me and he goes, "You want to be married to you." He goes, "That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard." Can you even imagine if you married you, all the crazy ideas that would be generated? You and your family would spontaneously combust in a month, and it would be catastrophic. And he's playful, but he's just going. He said, by God's grace, He has given you a woman that can put up with all your wild ideas, sort through them, not overreact, and then join you in the next steps. Like you were given such a gift. He goes, "That's so dumb." Like he just kept saying, "That's so dumb." He's shaking his head. And he's right. And I was playing, and so was he. But the point is, so oftentimes we want someone that we're not married to. And I will tell you, everything changes, leader, when you find yourself feeling lucky to be married to the person that you're next to. And I find myself driving around town, going home, and just saying this simple phrase, "I'm so lucky to be married to Pam. I'm so lucky to be married to Pam." And I keep saying that until I believe it, until I act like it. Be content. Be content in the spouse that you have.
Yeah, so just a reminder of a few verses, Proverbs 5:18. Rejoice, the second part of that, rejoice in the wife of your youth. Rejoice in the spouse that God has given you. And then we know 1 Timothy 6:6, godliness with contentment is great gain. Yeah. So that's not some just Hobby Lobby plaque. I mean, that is straight from Scripture, right? And so, man, this godliness that comes from being content, trusting the Lord who He's put in front of me, and that is the greatest gain. So godliness with contentment is great gain.
Yeah, good. Yeah. Number 3 is to be intentional. And so just as Joel's farm perfectly reflected the amount of intentionality he put into it, so does your marriage. Your current marriage perfectly reflects the amount of intentionality that you put into it, or have up until this point. Joel's farm had, if you remember from day one, has a 12x increase in yield because he's been intentionally just investing and cultivating in it. And while I was walking around, one of his hands pulled up a weed. He puts down new organic matter every single year, constantly, and waters it. And so friends, whatever it is that we've been doing or not been doing in our marriages today reflect them. You know this as a leader, what that's like. Your ministry at the church perfectly reflects the amount of intentionality that you've put towards it, and you know how to increase your intentionality to get things to change. The same thing applies. The same thing applies in your marriage.
Yeah, so the ways we've tried to be intentional through the years, there's a great adage for personal spiritual development: divert daily, withdraw weekly, abandon annually. We've kind of taken that for marriage too. And so what does it look like? It looks different in different stages of life. When the kids are little, if we can divert daily, we get like 2 minutes. Are we still alive? Okay, we're good. Now it looks a little different. We're empty nest this year. It's us and the dog for hours. So we have lots of times to daily divert. Weekly, withdraw. Date nights, again, different life stage, different budget. It just looks different. Sometimes we go out, sometimes we literally, just have dinner by ourselves after the kids went to bed, but just some kind of connection during the week. And then abandon annually. We'll be married 29 years this summer, and every year without exception, we have gotten away just in some capacity. Maybe it's 24 hours, maybe it's longer. I remember early on, lots of little kids, not much money. We did the Priceline thing. Do you remember that? So you put in the top dollar you can pay, and about 2 hours before they say, this is where you're going. We drove by that hotel the other day, and we were horrified. How we made it out alive. We would not let our kids stay there, but we just needed some time away. I think I needed to sleep for hours, and so that was great. And then for our 20-year, we looked ahead, we planned, we saved our airline miles, and we spent a week just hiking around Iceland, just thinking about the 20 behind, looking to what's ahead. And that was really fun for us. So just being intentional with what that looks like. A couple of other things, date nights. One year we said, hey, let's do something different. Let's do learning dates. So now we are master potters. We can blow glass. We can make these amazing meals. We can drive a boat. All those things we're amazing at, right?
Yeah. Well, to be clear, we took one lesson on each of those.
Yeah. Don't let us borrow your boat, actually. Probably not.
I wouldn't give us your boat.
Idea.
Yeah.
So, but those things, we just tried to prioritize us, be intentional, not be bored, not doing the same thing. We just tried to say, hey, can we creatively prioritize and put effort and thought into us?
Yeah, and one of our adages is, we cheat on us. So we've got a budget, just like every family. We've got to stay within the boundaries. And you're going to cheat on something, and we just say, if we're cheating on anything, it's not the kids, and it's not like depreciating assets. It's on us, because we're the only appreciating asset right here that we've got going on right now. Especially now that our kids are gone, we'll cheat on us. We'll splurge on us. Anything that would help us move towards oneness. And it doesn't take a lot. You actually don't have to have money, but if you're going to splurge, that's where we've chosen to splurge. So you can go to conferences, you can read books, you can do counseling, you can go to intensives. But friends, I would encourage you to do something to be intentional. And again, you know how to be zealous and intentional in ministry. And I think if some of us would just apply that same zeal to our marriages, we'd really, really enjoy our first ministry. We'd really enjoy it. Just like you have in ministry, when you give yourself to it, you find yourself loving the people and everything there so much more. Same applies to marriage. Number 4 is to clarify your vision. Clarify your vision. As a couple, what is it that you want to be about? And again, as a leader, you know how to do that. You set true north. There's some things you're going to do, some things you're not going to do, and then that brings clarity and you go after it. And so as a couple, what is it that you want to do? What is it that you want to be about? And that trip that Pam talked about in Iceland, we were walking around this volcanic mountain, and I just said, hey, we've got 7 years until our kids are out of the house. What do we want to do? Who do we want to become? What do we want to be true in 7 years? And so we just said, hey, I think these are the 4 things we're going to rally around. Number 1, we want to be faithful to God. During this next 7 years, we want to be faithful. We want to be helpful to other people. We want to be willing to take risk. We don't want to slide into being safe. And then number 4, we want to be best friends when our kids leave home. And by God's grace, I think by and large we were.
Yeah, and they left home this year. And we miss them and we love our family, but it's been really fun.
Yeah.
It's been a fun year. And so we said, hey, we did that. So what do we want the next years to look like? So now it looks a little bit different. We're still want to be faithful to God. We got that one in there. We want to be servants of others. So now that we have time and a little bit more capacity, we want to just pray and see what it looks like to just come behind some groups and individuals and just kind of recklessly support them. And so whatever that looks like, to serve others. We want to still be willing to take risks. Champions of our kids. So we have adult kids now, and as they have their own ministries and their own families, we want to support and be champions in any way that we can to them. And then the last one, best friends when we die. I guess that's the next one, right? It's the next big milestone.
The next big milestone, that's right.
There you go.
Yeah. So, yeah, we planned 7 years for the first one, and this, this is a little bit longer.
That grid and that just that vision has been really helpful for us making decisions. So, we've got an empty weekend. What do we want that to look like? We've got this ask of us. What do we want that to look like the next years? And so as we've run decisions through that, that's been really helpful.
Yeah. And so, again, you know how to do this as a leader. I just encourage you to do so with your spouse, with your marriage, or your closest relationships, okay? Number 5 is to honor your spouse's ministry. Honor your spouse's ministry. So oftentimes in a ministry couple, someone has a little bit more visible ministry and someone has a little bit less visible ministry. And we told these sweet ladies rocking those Jordan Lows yesterday, right? Some gifts or some roles are more visible, but none of them are more valuable. And what can happen so oftentimes, I do think there's an us to ministry. I really do. Pam and I use the collective pronouns us, we, ours, all the time. And yet there is still things that God's put in Pam's heart, the way she's wired, that is my responsibility. This as a pastor, to pull out and help people live into their gifts. I still have that responsibility, even though we have an us. And my role is a little bit more visible than hers.
Yeah, and so John, you could probably tell, this. He's big vision. Like what he's been thinking about the past month is you guys, and it's been killing him that we only have seats for 3,200 of you, that there's this wait list and that more people can't be here. And what I've been concerned about the past few weeks is my neighbor down the street who broke her hip, and does she have enough meals? My neighbors behind me that I know their marriage is struggling. Where can we step into that? What's going on with one of my kids? And so they're different, they're just as valuable, but they look different.
Yeah, and I'm growing in this. I'm growing in this, but on my best days, I'm learning to celebrate Pam's wiring and gifts. And it was a couple months ago. She wanted to go see this couple. She said they live about 30 minutes away, and I think we should go see them. I think we should take the dinner up there, and I think we should go encourage them. And I'm like, dude, my bent would be, let's get 5 couples to come to us. We can maximize that, and then there's just another way to think about this. And it was one of my better days. And I said, yeah, do you feel like we should do that? She goes, yeah. Great, I'm in. I'm in like it's my idea, not reluctantly or dragging my feet. And coming home, I just said, Pam, I'm so grateful for the ways that God's wired you. That wouldn't have been my first move, but I'm so glad I'm married to you. And I want to give you more space and more energy to do that. And you see Pam around here. She's always supporting me, but it's my job to support and call out her. We know that Ephesians 4:12, we use that in our body, and I think we should use that with our spouse as well. Help them have their ministry.
Yeah. So the next point is we learn to take ground in our ministries is to handle the hard well, right? So in church work, you will be maligned, misunderstood, underpaid. You're like, who is that, right? No, underpaid and overworked. And there'll definitely be conflict, and that will come home with you, right? And so the way that you handle that with your spouse, with your closest relationships, is a way to take ground. Frankly, this is a big thing that I've had to work on and still do. So John comes home and he's feeling one of those things, and I'm usually, hey babe, I'm so sorry. And then very quickly jump to, where are they right now? Because I'm gonna take them out at the knees. I just jump right to that. And then I can amplify stress, and I've had to work on how do I do just the opposite. And then for him, just to close the loops, just to remember. So I'll ask him, hey, you had that conflict 2 weeks ago. How's that going? He's like, oh, we patched that up the next morning. We're totally fine. And I was like, okay, next time let me know. I've been shooting daggers at him for the last 2 weeks. You gotta keep me in the loop on this. And so I want to be the CEO of John, the Chief Encouragement Officer, not the one that gins him up and where are we going to go to take these people out? Hey, I want to encourage you. I'm sorry, babe, that you feel that way, but how can I encourage you? How can we be compassionate?
Yeah, and there is, I think, some discretion about ministry is hard. Yep. We can agree with that. But there's some discretion about what we share, how we share it, the emotion that we share, because that's in the church context, it's still Pam's church, right? And what I'm not saying is to cover for sin ever. I would never say that. But there is some discretion, and the way there's a gift a spouse can give to handle the ministry hard, where you can empathize. And Pam can say, that sounds really hard, man. How are you feeling about that? Is there anything I can do? But here's the thing. We're going to trust God in this. and we are gonna pray for resolution or for unity. We're not gonna hope for someone's demise or cast ourselves as a victim and keep in this kind of death cycle and go down. And friends, I've seen it over and over and over again. And it's taken couples out. And so we wanna believe the best. Right? And we want to practice all the things we would call other people to in terms of conflict resolution and handling the heart and trusting the sovereignty of God, never excusing sin. But it can be a real gift. It can be a real gift to give your spouse as how you handle the heart. And then I would also say, man, share the good. Share the good, and in fact, practice sharing the good. When you see evidences of God's grace in your church, in your ministry, share that, not just that which is difficult. And we would sit around the table as a family when the kids were little, and we'd try to share stories with them about what God was doing. And so there was a season we were trying to get the marriage ministry off the ground, and we were up here probably, a lot of times 2 nights a week. The kids were in childcare. They weren't big fans. I got that, And we would sit down, and we had this thought, like, hey, the way we handle all this is going to have a lot to do with whether these kids love Jesus and his church. And we need to handle this really, really well, because they can become embittered or they can feel like they're on mission with us. And so we'd sit around at the table and we would share these amazing marriage stories. Now, some of them had to be scrubbed and redacted a little bit. There's a lot of juicy stuff in there that we couldn't tell them, but we shared those headlines. This person came to Christ. This marriage was restored. We're watching this person grow in their faith. And I remember one of our little kids looked up at us. He goes, "So are you saying we get credit for that?" And I was like, "Absolutely, buddy. You get credit for all of it. We're in this together." And so they knew at times. I mean, there's just people that are involved. Sometimes it's hard, but we wanted to make sure we shared the good with them and also with your spouse. Make sure you're in the habit of not just sharing the hard, but you're also sharing the good, okay? Next one. Tell someone everything. You heard JP talk about how this pastor that had an affair said, there's some stuff you don't tell anyone. And I would say there's some stuff you have to tell someone everything. You have to. A few months ago, Pam and I were sideways. I mean, we were talking probably about as sideways as we remember being in the last 10 years, maybe ever. We were frustrated, right? Or we were past frustrated. We were mad at each other. And so, unfortunately, we were going to dinner with one of our friends, Dave and Kara Bruskus. And so we're on the way to dinner, and we're not ready to write marriage books at this moment, You shouldn't be listening to us, given the tension that was in the car. And I remember Pam goes, "Should we share this with Dave and Kara?" And I said, "Absolutely we should. We would be so foolish not to." Dave and Kara, Dave's on staff here. They're a wise, godly couple. They love us. Why in the world would we not share Proverbs 28:13? Whoever conceals his sin will not prosper, but whoever confesses and renounces his sin will find mercy, right? JP quoted James 5:16 yesterday. And so we ordered, our drinks and chips and salsa and started going. I said, "Hey, babe, why don't you just catch Dave and Kara up on where we are? Dave and Kara would love your wisdom, would love, any feedback, any next steps for us." And so we talked. It wasn't, it wasn't overly dramatic, but they listened. They asked just a few questions more than anything else. And I just said, "Hey, we're going to be praying for you." Followed up the next day. How are you guys doing? And I said, I think by God's grace, we got the log out of our own eye. We repented and asked each other's forgiveness. I think we're good. Thank you so much. Right? But all that stuff just kind of dies when you put it into the light. And some of us are sitting on secrets, and it's not helping us, friends. It's not helping us. And if you want to finish well, if you want to have a great ministry, you're going to have to make sure that somebody knows everything.
Yeah, and so you have a chance with those that you lead and when you teach to be honest about yourself, about the good. I mean, you want to celebrate it, and also the really hard. You want to give models from your own life. Most people in your congregation don't have practical examples of how to own their own part, how to extend and receive forgiveness, how to walk in grace, how to resolve conflict. And so you have a chance, like as Paul said in 1 Thess 2:18, like not only share the gospel, but your very life. And so there's an opportunity just to model that, to share the good and the bad with the people that you're leading.
Yeah, that's right.
And John does this so well. We were laughing. I think you put it really well in this word picture. I was like, we always throw you under the bus. And he was like, yeah, and it feels like then we back it up and run over me again. So we always laugh. I got to find one where I throw myself under the bus more. But he just does such a good job celebrating me, celebrating us, but also just, man, here's where we messed up. Here's how we worked through it. Hopefully that's helpful for you. And so you have a chance to be honest and really lead by example.
Yeah, this isn't in the notes. But if you flinch and you don't want other people to know your stuff, there's a decent shot you don't actually believe the gospel. Because if you did, you don't need the validation of someone else. You've got it from the God of the universe, and you are good with him. And so if we're running around kind of trying to manage our image, pastor, leader, friend, maybe we don't believe the gospel. And if you did, why would you not tell everything to someone? Okay. Number 8, to have a great ministry is to set boundaries. And Pam and I were talking, it's so funny, people, it's become kind of commonplace to take shots at Billy Graham and his legalistic approach to the opposite sex. If he was famous for not walking into a hotel room alone, lest anything happened that could potentially discredit the ministry. And so people are like, oh, it's so legalistic. Well, you know what, friends? Billy Graham never had an affair. And pendulums don't stop in the middle when they swing, and I feel like we've gone a little too far on our, kicking against the legalism, and we probably need to rein this stuff back. And we need to do it in a God-honoring and wise way, but some boundaries. I just wouldn't have extended time alone with someone else of the opposite sex. I would never confide my marital issues in someone of the opposite sex. I would never speak poorly about my spouse to someone of the opposite sex, or actually be around any other couples that continually do that. I don't want that on me. And finally, I would just say, if you find yourself attracted, and my hunch is at some point in your marital journey, you will find yourself attracted to someone else. You tell someone. You tell someone. You don't try to manage that and make it, suppress it and go away. You get help. You confess that, and you ask for prayer from trusted folks. But you don't just let that go unchecked, okay? And so, any thoughts on that?
Oh, just developing, what that looks like as you're being careful with people of the opposite sex. But then how do you, if you have women on your team, how do you still develop them and just pour into them?
Yeah. So in that, as we think about just kind of setting boundaries, make sure that you don't, in a male-dominated culture, that you don't neglect developing female leaders as well. So, because I would never go travel, 2 hours with a woman by herself to a ministry event and have that training. I've got to make sure that I make up for that somehow, either bring groups or create other environments for them. They shouldn't have to be developed in some way less than because they're a female, okay? But I'm not driving 2 hours with a female. That's not my wife, unless there's more people around. I just won't do that. And so, but that, again, is on me.
Yeah, so we recently heard about a study that Howard Hendricks did, and he interviewed a couple of hundred couples that had an affair in ministry. And one thing that was common from all of them, they had either thought, or many of them said out loud, it can't happen to me. And so just the sober thought right now for all of us to think, it can happen to me.
Yeah.
This week. It could happen anytime, and just to be sobered by that.
Yeah. And so, friends, when are you at risk? I'm going to give you five times you're at risk for an affair, for lowering your standards, not obeying Jesus. Number one, when things are going great. Like when you're rolling, you've got the wind to your back, God's blessing what you're doing, you think more highly of yourself, you think the rules don't apply, and sometimes you think you deserve more than you have. Be aware when things are going well. When they're not going well, we get discouraged and we check out of our long-term thinking, and we would do things for a quick hit of dopamine that we're gonna regret for a really, really long time. Be aware when things aren't going well. Be aware when you're bored. There are ways to fix boredom. A new relationship with someone of the opposite sex is not the way. Find another way. Find an outlet. Find something that challenges you. Number 4, life transitions. So it might be a new baby, it might be a death in the family, it might be the kids moving out, someone getting sick. It's going to disrupt what was, and you've got to be sobered in those moments. And here's the fifth time. The fifth time. Any day that ends in Y, friends. You could have an affair, you could discredit the name of Christ, and we must be sober.
Yeah, and so the last one, the way to work on your ministry, your marriage, your closest relationships is to live out the gospel, right? So it's a blessing to work in ministry because we daily get to think, talk, shape all of our ideas around the gospel. That's why we're doing this. It can also be an occupational hazard, that it just becomes another topic that we talk about. But what a great opportunity we have in marriage or in a really close friendship just to live out all the parts of the gospel. It's the perfect place to practice it and then to show it as you lead others.
Yeah, so we'll go to bed many nights and Pam will either have her Bible open or some book, and I can't see the title, but there's one that she goes to a lot. So, gospel is on there. She's reading it. She's very fluent in it. She understands it. She teaches it. She lives it. And so it's been a while, probably a couple years, and Pam and I were going to bed, and we're getting into the day, and I just kind of popped off and said something. I didn't probably mean it to be as hurtful as I did, but I wasn't being careful, and it landed, and I just thought, ooh, that wasn't good. And immediately after I said, babe, I'm really sorry that I said that. I wish I hadn't. And would you forgive me? And she said, yeah, I forgive you. She's a little quiet. She said, yeah, I do forgive you. I was like, thank you. I'm really sorry. I woke up the next morning and I was still thinking about that. I was like, God, dude, why would you do that to God's daughter? Are you kidding me? Like, you know better than that, And we're getting ready and I'm brushing my teeth and Pam comes in behind me. She's walking across the mirror and I see her, she's walking. And I'm like, hey, Pam, again, like last night, I'm really, really sorry I did that. And she kept walking and she came behind me. So she's standing directly behind me. I've got a little more girth than her. And so she just disappears behind me. And I remember looking and in just a second, I see these little bitty like T-Rex arms. So it's my story. It's the way I remember it. She puts her arms around me, and I still can't see her. And she pokes around. She goes, hey, I told you last night I forgive you. We're good. Next. She squeezed me and kept walking. Where does that come from? It comes from a woman who understands the gospel, who has taught the gospel, and who lives the gospel. And she opens up her Bible to Ephesians 2, and she knows that all of us were by very nature deserving of wrath. Right? Just like I was the night before, I deserved wrath. But she's like, yeah, I deserved wrath, but instead I got grace from God. So I'm just going to give what I got. I understand. That's how that works. I understand that pattern. And I forgive you. Like, where does that come from? Well, because she's so familiar with Matthew 18. She's like, man, I know what to do with this. I'm the unmerciful servant who's been forgiven everything. So I just give that back. And friends, I guess if we could give you one piece of marital advice, it would be to live out the gospel that you keep preaching to others. Read some books, do some stuff, but just live out the gospel. Understand it, savor it, and extend it to your spouse.
Yeah. So to wrap up, how do you have a great ministry? Start with yourself. Draw that circle. Right? Choose to be content with who God's given you. Be intentional. Clarify your vision. Why we're doing this. Honor each other's ministries. Handle the hard parts, and there are some. There's a lot. Handle those well. Make sure that you have trusted people that you can tell everything to. Set wise boundaries, and then live out the gospel with your life.
Yeah. So friends, why would we do this in a marriage conference? Well, one should enjoy the gift of marriage. And it is a gift. You need to see it as such. And relationships, close relationships, are a gift from God. We need to savor them, to enjoy them, give glory to God for them. But two, We have got to stop tarnishing the name of Christ with the way that we are loving or not loving our spouses. It's a steady stream. The chief end of man is to glorify God. And some of us aren't doing a great job. So if everyone's gonna have a great marriage in Christendom, you have to have a great marriage, okay? Give yourself fully to it. Third, we wanna stop people from leaving ministry. It's a whole nother talk, but let me just say that if you've got a great marriage, there is a resiliency that you have where you can take punches and keep on going. Guys, work on your marriage so you can stay in this. It matters. What you do matters. And then lastly, because we all care about churches, healthy churches. Healthy marriages make up healthy churches. They just do, friends. Healthy churches do make healthy marriages, but healthy marriages are always the backbone of a thriving church, okay? So friends, I'd ask you, as we started, how is your ministry? How is your ministry? So this was, honestly, there's so much more we wanted to talk about, and we just do not have the time. However, since everybody bought the VIP package,
That's right.
We've got an extra piece of content for you. We're gonna put together a 90-day marriage cohort. So if you're interested, you wanna come hang out with us on Facebook, we'll get some other people who know more about marriage than us, and we'll just spend 90 days in there. If you're not married, come on in and just listen to the conversation. But if you would, you could go there. In your app, there should be a square, and you can, we'll jump in there, we'll see it, we'll start talking next week about ways we can work on our marriage, move towards oneness, and work on our primary ministry. So Pam, thank you. I'm lucky to be married to you. Thank you very much. Yeah.